Hello there friends and welcome. Today we have another very powerful Expedition 33 build. This time it's all about Sciel, the goddess of fate. Sciel for me is the ultimate true must-have party member. She has the quite unique and very OP ability of stun-locking bosses into oblivion, that is, she can constantly push back the turn of bosses and tough enemies as early as Act 1, to prevent them from taking even a single action as the rest of your party obliterates them, because she's not only stun-locking bosses, she's also pushing the turn of your other allies forward, granting them more turns and preventing enemies from doing anything at all. No matter if you are on Act 1 on Expert, Act 2, even Act 3. But of course Sciel can do even more, because at the same time as she stun-lock enemies, she can also deal great amounts of damage, hitting the damage cap as early as Act 1. And of course it only gets better and better from there, for even the classic millions worth of damage in Act 3. Plus she's amazing at buffing as well, with the unique ability of doubling the damage output of any ally of choice and providing them with even more turns. So without further ado, let us get into our Sciel Infinite Turns Boss Stunlocker build. First, let us cover the best skills for Sciel. Just like with my Mael build, I'll cover them in the order you should pick them from the start of the game, as if leveling her up when you first recruit her. Ideally, you absolutely wanna rush for the Lane Slash, her most OP skill and one of the best ones in the game. For that, however, you'll first need Marking Card, which you'll never really use, followed by Bad Omen. It has some minor uses as an area of effect skill for normal encounters, but you'll soon outgrow it. Then we can finally pick the highly powerful The Lane Slash, her strongest skill. The Lane Slash will deal medium single target damage for 2 hits using her weapon's elements. Most importantly, it will consume Foretell, even just 1 Foretell is enough, to increase the damage, and here's the best part: delay the enemy's turn. What this means is Sciel will attempt to push the enemy's turn backwards. The truly ultimate and cheesy overpowered part about this skill, however, is the fact it will stack with itself. What this means is, if you have enough turns on Sciel and enough speed, the more you use this skill, the more you'll push the enemy's turn back. So essentially, if you can, for example, act twice before the enemy, and you have enough AP to keep your combos going, you will keep pushing their turn back again and again and again, while they are completely unable to react at all. Plus, of course, while you are doing this, you are also indirectly pushing your other ally's turn forward, thus providing them with a lot more actions and the damage you need to destroy the enemy before they can do anything. Remember, you get this as early as Act 1. And of course in the How to Play section I'll explain how to use it to the best effect possible, so you can just loop it back and forth. Speaking about enhancing the power of our Lane Slash, what you want next is Card Weaver. For that you'll first need Rush, which is rather useless. Increasing your character's speed is nice, but you have ways of doing this automatically through passives. Followed by Spectral Sweep, you'll never use it. It doesn't really consume Foretell, so the damage will be low. Then Dark Cleansing. You also won't really be using this, but it does have some minor uses in that it doesn't cost an AP, something very unique for a skill. But honestly, what you really want is Card Weaver. Card Weaver is Sciel's main extra turn skill. You deal low single target physical damage with 1 hit, and will propagate and spread the target's Foretell to all enemies. What it doesn't tell you here is that when you have Sciel's best weapon, which can be found as early as Act 1, if you have the Chation weapon and use this skill, you will not only immediately apply 10 Foretell to one enemy of choice, which is the maximum outside of her Twilight status, but also at the very same time spread it to all the other enemies. Remember, it is an extra turn skill, so you can use this and during the extra turn, immediately combine it with the Lane Slash. So the Lane Slash will be at full power by consuming the Foretell you just applied with Card Weaver and your Chation weapon for increased damage and of course delaying the enemy's turn. Now as far as the Lane Slash, I don't think it matters how many Foretell the enemy has. From what I've tested, even if they only have 1 Foretell, is enough to apply the secondary effect of delaying their turn. But the more the better to increase its damage, of course. Last but not least, Card Weaver is a Sun skill, which means during this combo, since you'll get a Sun charge from Card Weaver, then immediately follow up with a Moon charge from the Lane Slash, at the next turn Sciel will immediately enter Twilight status, so in just 1 turn, you can have her at full maximum power. And honestly, these skills are so good when combined for a best weapon that you can kinda just rely on them forever until Act 3. But there are some other nice skills you can go for. Starting with Firing Shadow, her main area of effect skill. For that you need Harvest, which can heal her, but isn't really necessary when you are delaying enemies' turns forever. Searing Bomb can have some utility when combined with a character that can apply Burning, like Lune, but once again you just automatically apply 10 Foretell to all enemies with Card Weaver. Then we can pick Firing Shadow. Firing Shadow is very nice because it has a similar combo. It deals low dark damage to all enemies for 3 hits, is a moon skill, which means it also consumes Foretell per hit for increased damage. You can probably guess where I'm going with this, but indeed you can just go for Card Weaver to provide Sciel with an extra turn and apply 10 Foretell to all enemies. Then follow it up with a Firing Shadow, amazing on normal enemy encounters because you then don't need to delay their turns, and of course it will blow them up with a huge area of effect nuke as early as Act 1. After that, you have 2 other useful skills that are kinda optional but can still work. Plentiful Harvest is nice, in that you can refresh the AP of your allies by a lot. This will consume all Foretell on an enemy to give 1 AP for a party member for each Foretell consumed. It is actually split between your allies, which means if for example you apply 20 Foretell to an enemy, the maximum, and you use Plentiful Harvest, your whole party will pretty much gain 9 AP back. At 10 Foretell, the benefit is much lower, around 3 to 4 AP for each ally. What I'm saying is, it can be good, it's just that once again, looping your delaying slash for boss encounters or just going for Firing Shadow on normal enemies is a much better way of spending your AP as far as metagaming and min-maxing. Besides that, you can also go for Phantom Blade even earlier if you want, before you get Firing Shadow. Phantom Blade is only here because it is Sciel's main skill and way of breaking the enemies. It's here just in case because you can of course use another ally to break enemies like Gustav or Verso. Intervention is also something you can consider only towards the middle of the second chapter, by then you'll have enough points for all of this. So Intervention is unique in that it's Sciel's skills for providing an extra turn to one ally of choice. It will not work on herself, by the way, only allies. She immediately provides them with an extra turn, and they'll even gain 4 AP during this extra turn. Intervention can be nice if, and only if, you are first during Act 3, because of course by then characters like Mael can just blow the whole enemy pack in one hit, and in one turn, even on Expert mode, or towards let's say the middle of the second chapter, because for some characters like my Verso build that I'll release next, well, they can have loads of extra damage even in Act 2 for, multiple hits of the damage cap, including having innate extra turns themselves through gear, so Intervention becomes a lot more efficient than just, let's say, looping the lane slash, even though looping the lane slash is still better. The logic is quite simple as to when use Intervention in the second chapter. If the character you were giving this extra turn, like Verso, who can essentially have 3 turns in one, if they were about to kill the enemy with these extra turns, well, go for Intervention. Otherwise, you might as well just keep delaying the enemy's turn with the lane slash instead, to prevent bosses from acting ever. Besides that, the last skill you should pick for her, especially as early as Act 3 starts, is Fortune's Fury, a very powerful skill that can fully double the damage output of one ally of choice, and by the way, this does work on Sciel herself, unlike her Intervention we just covered. The main reason I'm saying to only pick this in Act 3 is because of course by Act 3 you can break the damage cap, so doubling your damage is really efficient. When you combine this with, for example, powerful one-hitting nukes like Mael's Stand-Up ability I just covered in my build for her, well, instead of 100 million you do even higher, 200, 400, even a billion damage with the proper setup. Sciel's other skills are rather subpar. I mean, there is something to be said about picking Twilight Dance. Twilight Dance can be her hardest hitting skill once you break the damage cap, as you'll have 4 hits of extreme single target dark damage. It's just that usually by the time you pick this you'll be in Act 3, and by then you have characters like Verso, Mael who can do much higher damage, especially when supported by Sciel. Last but not least, Sciel also has the most powerful first tier gradient skill in the game, Shadow Bringer. This essentially will supercharge her. It deals high single target dark damage to random enemies for 10 whole hits, and of course if there's only one enemy left, like a boss, they'll take all the hits for 10 hits. Most importantly, it will also apply 1 foretell per hit for 10 if cast out of Twilight, or 20 if cast during Twilight, regardless of you having the Chation weapon or not. Now, its most unique benefit is that, as a gradient skill, it also immediately provides you with an extra turn. What this means is, if let's say you find yourself without AP to cast both Card Weaver and the Lane Slash on essentially the same turn, you can instead use Shadowbringer to fully generate 10 or 20 foretell, and follow it up with a Delaying Slash at a much lower AP cost than having to rely on Card Weaver first. Plus, of course, this will do much higher damage than Card Weaver. Also, it's a Sun skill, so of course, will let you go into Twilight when you use the Lane Slash afterwards. The same for restoring AP when using the Lane Slash after having a Sun charge. And that's pretty much it for the best Sciel skills, act by act. Now let us cover the best stats for our Infinite Turn Sciel build. Agility, of course, will be the most important one, especially in Sciel's case. And you'll want to rush for 70 agility as soon as possible. The reason is simple. When Sciel uses her Delaying Slash, at the very least you'll want her next turn to be pushed forward in the order, while at the same time delaying the boss's turn, of course. This way, you can of course just do the Lane Slash again and keep stacking it as you constantly push the boss's turn back, while at the same time pushing the turns of, let's say, your slower allies forward in turn order, so they also get more actions. But Sciel, of course, is the most important one because she is the one enabling this in the first place. After 70 agility, since you have diminishing speed returns, go with luck instead for higher criticals and more speed. Now, Act 3 is when things kinda change. So her special best weapon scales with luck and also vitality. Luck is nice because you'll have it maxed out anyways, for the best critical chance and speed. Vitality, of course, is not really that needed, especially when you are, preventing bosses and enemies from ever acting. But if you wanna have the highest damage with Sciel possible, on Act 3 anyways, you can also max Vitality out, just for the best weapon scaling. It's not necessary, especially if you're using other characters like Verso and Mael for damage instead. Besides that, you actually do not need agility at all in Act 3, because look, you can get enormous extra speed by passive and gear alone. For example, when you look at my character's stats screen, I have almost 2000 speed just from equipped PICTOS, which of course means you don't care about agility anymore. So yes, you could safely ignore agility and respect to have max luck, max vitality, and also max might. Only if you want her to have the best damage, otherwise, just keep to luck, agility, and vitality. Now let us cover the best weapons, PICTOS and LUMINA for Sciel chapter by chapter, starting with Act 1. Honestly, Chation is the best weapon choice by far. It is so good that you might as well consider it the best for the whole game, that's how powerful this weapon is. And it is also the enabler of your most powerful combos. All because of its first ability at level 4. Sun skills always apply 10 foretell. What this means is, any Sun skill will apply 10 foretell, which also means, of course, your very own Card Weaver skill, as it is a Sun skill. It will not only apply 10 foretell, but at the same time provide you an extra turn, which of course is super busted because you can then follow it up with a Delaying Slash, as I just mentioned before. This not only lets you stunlock the bosses forever, but also highly increase your damage. There is just no comparison whatsoever with any other weapon, because well, this does everything. Now it does have the downside of doubling all damage you take. This might seem dangerous, but look, who cares? That's the real question, because come on. When you are looping the Lane Slash, nothing is ever attacking anyone in your party, including Sciel, including even super tough enemies on expert mode early. So who cares once again? The only sad part is the level 10 and 20 abilities for Chation are kinda poor, but it doesn't matter because the level 4-1 is so much busted. Now, what if they ever nerf Chation or prevent it from working with, let's say, Card Weaver? Who knows? You might also consider going with Range Sun in the first chapter. This one has a very powerful life-stealing ability. You'll recover 5% health per foretell applied, which of course means when you use something like her starter focus foretell skill, you'll immediately restore 25% of your health, which is a lot considering, well, it's essentially something added for free to your combos. As far as PICTOS, it is all about speed. You might as well give all the highest speed PICTOS to Sciel the earliest. As far as Sciel's Luminas, you absolutely want to focus into all of the most powerful plus AP boosting talents, especially Energizing Start 1, 2, and 3. The reason is quite simple. You want to go into Card Weaver, followed by the Lane Slash, as early as the very first turn of battle. This is, however, quite AP expensive, around 8 AP. When you have all the 3 line of Energizing Start talents, however, you can do that just fine, even on turn 1. For the second turn, it doesn't matter because Sciel will recover AP, all of her AP back anyways, by virtue of having a Sun Charge and using the Lane Slash. But it's all about the most powerful Alpha Strike possible. Remember, you can get Energizing Start 1, 2, 3, even as early as you recruit Sciel. Now, because Energizing Start 3 is quite expensive, Lumina-wise at 15 points, I recommend you actually equip this one as a PICTOS than the other ones you use by paying the Lumina cost. Besides that, you'll of course want First Strike is a must-have on any party member, because without it, you aren't acting twice before a boss battle. The only other Lumina passive effect you need in Act 1 is Critical Burn, because it's always useful for higher critical chance, but Sciel, even in Act 1, can hit for the damage cap on the Lane Slash even without a critical. Which also means you shouldn't be afraid of equipping something like Confident, because it does provide high speed and critical rate. She doesn't need to heal when, enemies aren't attacking her at all, because you prevent them from doing that. Now let us cover the best Chapter 2 options. Well, as I mentioned before, Chation is still the best. Unless they ever nerf it, you don't really need anything else. But something else you can pick at this point is the very useful Sadon weapon. This is one of her best defensive weapons, as it will constantly give her shields. Shields, of course, are amazing because they fully absorb 1 hit per shield. And on her turn start, Sciel will gain a shield if she has at least 1 Sun Charge active, which of course has amazing synergy with her Card Weaver ability. As you use Card Weaver, you'll have 1 Sun Charge, get an extra turn from it, and get 1 shield. The only downside of Sadon is that under Twilight, she won't be getting any Sun Charges, so she won't get shields. But once her Twilight status ends, she'll get more and more and more. It also has some other properties that synergize well with shields, as you'll get to apply 5 foretell on enemies that break shields, of any ally by the way. Lastly, plus 2 Sun Charges on counterattacks, which is nice when you go against jump or gradient attacks, which are easy to parry and counterattack than normal hits. For Sciel's equipped Act 2 PICTOS, it's once again mostly about speed and critical hit. Mostly speed. Thing is, because you have more Lumina points, you don't necessarily need to equip the PICTOS for their actual passive effects. Rather just get them through Lumina instead. For the best Luminas, the most important one in Act 2 is Energizing Turn, which increases her AP by +1 whenever her turn starts. Of course, she'll get a lot of turns by constantly applying Card Weaver. So essentially you're getting 2 AP for every new turn, including extra turns. This way you won't need Energizing Start 3 and 4. So just keep to the first and second variants. Besides that, you absolutely want Auto Rush and also the Greater Rush upgrade, as to truly increase your Sciel speed to the max. Great if you're tackling some optional tough enemies, even on Act 2 instead of waiting until you can break the damage cap. And don't forget about the Immediate Res, passive that all characters should always have as early as the beginning of the second act. Of course, it has great synergy with Sciel's Sadon weapon, if you want to go with it instead of Chation, or if Chation ever gets nerfed, because it's even more shields for her. She can essentially start battle with 4 to 5 shields, just like that. And as far as Act 3, honestly, I would just still keep to Chation. Unless they nerf this weapon, there is no comparison whatsoever. I'm not saying it is her best weapon for damage, especially in Act 3, but, you know, you already have other characters like Mael, Verso, even my Monoko build that I'll soon post that can deal millions worth of damage, so I don't see a point in focusing in damage for Sciel. As far as her PICTOS in Act 3, once again it's all about speed, all the way. And when it comes to Lumina, you can of course spend a lot of points into extra damage for her, I just find it unnecessary. I'd much rather focus into utility. For that you need of course Cheater. And yes, you can get it in the second chapter still, especially with this build, since the enemy you need to defeat it will never get a turn, regardless of how strong Sprong is as a boss. Cheater opens up more combos with Sciel, because you then will not be reliant on Card Weaver anymore, meaning you can, for example, apply Fortune's Fury for double damage on 2 allies on the same turn, or even apply Fortune's Fury followed by Intervention on the same turn, from the extra turn provided by Cheater. Besides that, it's just Lumina for extra energy, especially Energy Master, which you can find during Act 3. But you know, by Act 3 battles aren't gonna last longer than 1 turn, it's just here for utility if you need. And obviously, if you want to focus into damage, it's gonna be expensive, but you can do it if you want. You can just follow my Mael build as a guideline. There's stuff like Immaculate, also Glass Cannon, Shield Affinity, Powerful Shields, stuff like that to stack damage bonuses. I just find it unnecessary. Now let's cover how to play with our Infinite Turn Sciel build, starting with Act 1. Although it's mostly the same for Act 1 and Act 2. Well, it's all very simple. You will have the Chation weapon, of course, because you can find it as early as Act 1 in the Stone Cliffs dungeon. For boss battles, all you need is start with Card Weaver, which of course will provide Sciel with an extra turn, a Sun Charge, and most importantly 10 Foretell on all enemies. You will then get an extra turn from it, which means it's time for Delaying Slash. It will consume the Foretell applied by Card Weaver for loads of damage, which means you can easily hit a damage cap even in Act 1 for twice, 9,999 damage, and delay the enemy's turn. Here's the thing, for most bosses, especially the really tough bosses if you do them early, let's say in the second chapter, using Delaying Slash just once will not be enough to push them back. That is why you'll be focusing into Agility, followed by the First Strike passive. This way you can essentially apply Delaying Slash twice, before the enemy gets 1 turn, which is enough to keep them looped back and forth. Slowing the enemy is also very useful against the really powerful enemies if you're doing them early. For story bosses, it's not that necessary. For that, you can have Monoko with his Lancerier Impale ability to slow enemies, or of course, Lune with her starter Ice Lance power. When you combine slow with 2 Delaying Slashes, even super tough optional enemies will be stun-locked into oblivion. And they'll never remove the slow effect because of course it's counted based on them getting a turn, which they won't. By the way, this also means if you stun the enemy, they'll be stunned for the whole battle, and slowed. Another thing to consider is that this combo of course can be expensive AP wise, but you will always have enough for 2 times at least. Because here's the thing, whenever you activate a Sun skill with Sciel, you will gain a Sun Charge. If you then use a Moon skill like Delaying Slash and consume Foretell, when you have a Sun Charge, you will both gain a Moon Charge and recover all the AP spent based on how many Foretell you consumed. Since you're always applying 10 Foretell at the least, you get all of your AP back, which means that the next true turn, Sciel can do this again, for free essentially. Here's the thing, at this other turn she'll also enter Twilight status because of course, Card Weaver is a Sun skill and Delaying Slash a Moon skill, so that's enough for Twilight. When you are under Twilight, you cannot benefit from this extra AP recovery by consuming Foretell. This is where your other allies will come into play to ensure your Sciel is constantly fed loads of AP. Especially during Act 1 when you won't really have many ways of gaining loss of AP back. The most useful way for Act 1 is having one of your allies use an energy consumable on Sciel. As early as Act 1, your upgraded energy consumable can already restore 5 whole AP points.
The cards have spoken.
The only downside, of course, is that you'll have limited uses, although it's always recharged, on a resting point, so you'll always have them all before a boss battle. Remember, as you attempt to push the boss's turn back, you're also pushing your allies' turns forward, so they'll always be able to act and restore AP to Sciel. For the second act, however, you have other ways of, let's say, enhancing this. One of them, of course, is her Gradient skill, Shadowbringer, which is the main reason I mentioned it in the skill section. Once again, if you find yourself without enough AP to keep your Card Weaver and the Lane Slash combo going, go for Shadowbringer and follow it up with the Lane Slash, but only when you wouldn't have enough AP. Because of course, the whole point is saving your Gradient charges for when you actually need them the most. Another very useful way of having your Sciel constantly topped with AP is Monoko. And of course I'll detail this better in my build guide for him, but to put it simply, Monoko has a special weapon called Ballado you can find in Act 2, right as you recruit him, that will constantly provide extra action points to all allies when he goes into Almighty Mask or uses upgraded skills. So when you combine this, plus characters feeding action points through consumables into Sciel, and then the times where you can use her Gradient charge for that, well, your Sciel will never run out of AP, and you can just keep looping the Lane Slash and Card Weaver combo again and again and again and again. Now let's cover how to play with our Sciel build during Act 3. In Act 3 the meta kinda changes of course, because characters like Mael, Verso and so on can do so much damage in just a single turn, well, you don't need to delay bosses' turns anymore, they'll be dead in one turn. So what you can do is instead fully focus into Ciel's buffing side, by of course casting Fortune's Fury for double damage on a powerful character like Mael, and combining it with Intervention for extra turns, since you will have extra turns to do that yourself through the Cheater passive. Well, alright friends, so this was it for our Sciel Infinite Turn builds. If you found this guide useful as always, please remember to like, subscribe and consider becoming a channel member if you can. I truly appreciate your support. Next build will be Verso followed by Monoko. Thank you for watching and see you next time friends.